come back to school, and people looked at me with these wide eyes and was like, why are you here?
Like dead man walking.
Yes. And I'm at my locker and I'm like, what do you mean? Why am I at school? And they said, well, we thought you were dead. And I'm
Good morning. We are all trying to fit into this very small frame on the phone. So I'm Crystal, of course, and I'm here with my dad who you met last week, and then this is my sister, Adrienne. She is number 2 of 4. So I'm the baby, she's number 2, and we want to talk to you today about the power of testimony, and then a personal testimony that she has, which I put photos on earlier this morning, just 2 photos from the car accident. From how old were you when you got in the car accident?
17.
17. So what year was that? Remember? A while ago. A long time ago. I was in middle school, so it was quite a while ago. So we're going to kind of go back through that day, but before we do that, I'm going to share the video here live. And while I do that, Adrienne, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? How old you are? What your kids? Did you have a couple kids? Just tell us
their age.
Fine. She's somewhere in her
She's older than
30s.
20.
Okay. Older than 20. All right. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I have 2 kids. I have Michaela, she's 13, and Molly, she's 10. Both of them are good girls.
And you're married?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
married to Lucas.
Yeah.
We've been married for, I think, 16 years. Got married in 2007.
And your job is your currently occupation?
Yep, I'm a director of, or controller at R&R Tools, so do the purchasing, HR, and human resources and the finance at Dad's company.
So she pays the people.
Controls the money.
Yes.
And most of the big decisions. So cool.
So for the parents, it's not so bad when your kids control your money with your permission.
With your permission.
Rather than just spend it and then you're obligated.
Well, before we get into the details, and I want to just, this is going on the new YouTube channel that we talked to you about, which is my channel, but it's got different playlists on it, so we can glean wisdom from my dad and his generation on not only leading business, but pastoring, and then just what it looks like to lead a life of ministry, where you actually believe that the Bible means what it says it means and that God does what he says he does. So when I was praying about this morning, I kept coming back to this verse in Revelation, chapter 12, verse 11, that says they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. And so often I feel like because of kind of mine and Adrienne's generation, a lot of times we're not grown up in church, don't have praying parents or praying grandparents. So having those testimonies, not only do they may not have them personally, but they probably not heard of some amazing, miraculous testimony. So we want to bring this to you and spark your faith in that not only does God heal, but he also protects too, which I think you'll see through the photos, which I'll edit in before it goes to YouTube. So you can see just kind of the awful state that your car was in when we came to the scene of the accident. And so as we go forward in life, right, and Dad, I want you to touch on this too, but the blood of the Lamb is already taken care of. That part is taken care of through Jesus' sacrifice. But the other part is the word of our testimony. And if we don't speak out our testimony, if we don't share, if we don't testify, then we're not overcoming, and the people around us don't get the chance to overcome the way that I feel like we're supposed to. You got a vantage point on that?
Everyone should have their own testimony. So the reason you can testify is because it happened to you, not your mother, sister, brother. It happened to you. So if you have a testimony of your own, you have your own proof in your own life, which to me really plays into the amount of faith you're able to have and your vision for the future. It just plays into so many different aspects, and I think that's what that scripture really means, is you overcome things because it happened to you, which was pretty much my sermon yesterday was, it needs to happen to you. you need to commit.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something at your mom's funeral just a couple weeks ago that I think will probably stick with me for the rest of my life. That you held up the Bible and you said, we should be able to put your story in here. And someone should be able to read your story and see how God provided and how he protected and how you lived a life for him. That it should be easy just to slide that in. So I think that goes right along with this. And Adrian, I know you've had multiple healings in your life, and you have children that are walking testimonies, literally, of the hand of God. But if we talk about your accident, so you were 17. Well, before that, Dad, will you tell us what you felt that the Lord had told you kind of before this all happened?
I can tell you what he showed me.
Okay.
And as when my kids were little, toddlers, I had a vision of one of them being hit in the road on a tricycle. So they were all standing, there was a bunch of people standing around watching me. So they wanted to see if she would come back to life or if she was dead. But the thing is nobody was helping me. They just all stood around watching me. So I took that as a warning and a caution, and every time something would happen, I kept thinking, maybe this is what it meant. 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 And it was odd because it was right in front of my house, so it was close to home.
Yeah.
So I had that for years prior to the wreck.
And you never told us, I don't think,
No,
that.
I don't think I told anyone because I didn't want everybody to fret and worry.
Yeah.
So the Lord can prepare you to be prepared, and then whenever you're called to the scene, you don't remember any of that. It's too late.
Wow.
You can't prepare then. You're done. So always the discipline to yourself is, if God shows you something is going to happen, you're not going to prevent it. You're going to have to deal with it. So you constantly judge yourself, like, if that was tomorrow, would I be ready?
That's good that you say that. And I love that God loves us enough to say, hey, this is coming, and prepare yourself for it.
Yeah, I hate it when he does that, honestly. And it's happened several times in my life, but
well, you didn't tell us, rightfully so, but you did put rules in place, which Adrian and I just talked about before we went live. We lived on this very busy state route that we lived on. We had a beautiful brick home off of this state route, and there was a horse track across the street, but the speed limit there was 55. So people would fly. In fact, another testimony for another day is one time an older woman flipped her car on that curve right by our house, and you went out and flipped the car over to save this sweet woman's life, who we then brought into the house and fed her popcorn or something. It was like this, but people were scared even then, like, oh, don't touch her, you could get sued. And it was just another, proof of God's, that he's miraculous. But there was the rule that we couldn't ride our bikes past. We had like this Rumpke trash can. We had the driveway that went into the state route. And we always put the trash can back from the road so we could ride our bikes, so we couldn't go past it. Well, I did go past it sometimes because I really liked feeling the smoothness of the road. And so I would ride my bike just on the limit, just as close as I could get. And one time Dad was home and he was working out in the shop, and you must have glanced up there and saw me, and I have very, very, very few memories ever of you yelling. And you yelled, but when you did it, it scared me so much. I thought, oh my gosh, like there must be a real danger in that. And it wasn't until, many years later that I realized, what God was lining up. But I never rode my bike past the trash can again.
So you realize what you did to me that day?
Yes. I thought, oh no, like he's very passionate about that. Like this is not a silly rule. Because in my young life, young mind, I'm like, well, there's no cars. Like I looked for the cars first, so I was of course trying to justify, which is probably a whole sermon series in itself. But so anyway, the Lord warns you beforehand, gives you the opportunity, praise God, to pray and, prepare yourself for that moment. So it was homecoming, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Basketball homecoming.
Basketball homecoming, which Adrian was a huge baller. The kids would call it these days.
Yeah.
Huge baller. And so it was homecoming, and we were all there at the game, our whole family. So there's 4 of us kids, mom and dad, were all there. And it was time to go home. And I remember coming to you and mom and dad and asking for me and my friend to ride home with you from the game, which normally would have not been an issue. You and I went to the Christian bookstore every other weekend and just like had to the mall, had a blast together. And you guys were very insistent that night, like, no, she's not coming home with you and you're not riding with your sister, you're going to ride with us. Which I was frustrated, of course, at in the moment. But what I didn't realize was that if I would have been in the back seat with you, I would have either died or been severely injured. Not to mention my friend, then we would have had that weight on our shoulders of not only your sibling being in the car, but this innocent bystander, basically. But so we all leave. I ride home with mom and dad. You drive your own car home, right? And so the scene of the accident, like Dad mentioned, that was it a vision or a dream?
No, that one was a vision.
Okay, that the vision was right in front of our house. Well, the scene of the accident was just a hop, skip, and a jump down the road. So we lived on the state route, and then there's a back road called Shawnee Trace, and it was just right there that the accident was. So I'll tell it from my perspective, and then you guys can hop in. But I remember being home. We weren't home for very long, I don't think.
No.
Maybe just had set our coats down or something. Not home for very long. And Adrian's boyfriend at the time called our house phone. Shocking. I still know that phone number.
Yeah.
Called our house phone, and I picked it up, and I could tell that he was really worried, but I thought he was kidding. He was saying, I need to talk to your dad. You need to hand the phone to your dad. Something's happened to Adrian.
And he was in the car. I don't know if he was in front of me or behind me at that time. 'Cause
Okay.
we were driving separate.
Okay, but one of you was following the other, so he was right there.
Yeah.
That's true. That's a good point. So he was in his car, either right in front of you or right behind you. So he witnesses pretty much the accident, calls from what, did he have a cell phone?
Probably.
Okay,
Yeah.
so he must have had a cell phone. So he calls, was likely a flip phone or a bag
Yeah.
phone. So he calls our house phone, and I pick up the phone. He's, frantic, and I think he's joking. But at this point, mom and dad are like, what's going on? Who's on the phone? And so I hand the phone to dad, and then do you remember what he said at that point?
And he said, it's bad, get here.
So I remember mom panicking in that moment.
That's hard to believe.
I remember mom panicking, and I don't know if you took the time to really explain to her what was going on, but I remember telling her, it's Chris. Chris is on the phone. Something's wrong. So we get our coats and we drive to Shawnee Trace, which was just a hop, skip, and a jump down the road.
Maybe 0.2 mile.
Okay, it's very, very close. And when we pulled up, I remember a lot of it, but I was probably, I wish I knew the year that it happened. I don't know, maybe 12 or 10 or so. Wait,
Probably in like 02.
we're 5 years apart. So if you were 17, what was I?
Yeah,
12.
Like 12, 13. Because
Okay.
you were a junior high cheerleader, right?
Okay, yeah. So 12, 13. Okay. So old enough to really vividly understand what was going on at this point.
Yeah.
And so Celia, our other sister, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
She was off in La La Land somewhere, right? Trying to get her home, but her route home would have been past the accident. So that was just a whole nother conundrum.
Yeah, she had to take somebody else home. So she wasn't going the same route where I was.
See how God literally has it all worked out. So mom and dad and I go and roll up on the accident, and dad, you can talk about this if you want to, what it looked like. But I remember getting there, seeing the car just mangled and wrapped around all of these trees. And it was so odd because that road had so many memories, because it was the road that we took to church. It was the road that we took to the fair. It was just a road that we took all the time. We're always in the car together on this road. So for it to be this road, this place, the car just completely mangled. I remember just being so overcome with fear that I didn't want to go look because I thought for sure that you had died. So I kind of go and hide by a tree. I think Chris, at that point, your boyfriend at the time, came over and stood with me, and he was panicked because I think maybe he felt like it was his fault a little bit. So he felt, was kind of over there with me. And I don't remember much then, Dad, until you prayed for Adrian. So do you want to talk a little bit about?
Well, I think no one wants to see their kid in that, period. But if you have to, you have to. And I think at that point you realize that the only thing you have is you have God to call on, or you don't. So if you don't, you're out of luck. So we were there, and I walked up beside the car and seen Adrian in there, and Bonnie saying, "You need to pray for her. You need to pray for her." And there's starting to get ambulances and people all around, and
because we beat the ambulance there, right?
Oh yeah, we were there before anyone.
Yeah.
And it was just smoke, and it was a mess. It's really horrific scenes. And so I prayed for Adrian, and she woke up, and she decided she was going to get out of the car. And I'm like, just stay there for a while, because you don't really know if there's broken bones or anything else. And just stay there for a while and relax. And she went back out, passed back out. And then someone's tapping me on the shoulder again. Yes, I'm right there with her, basically, just consoling her in case she needed anything. And then it was Mom again. You need to pray for her. I said, okay. So that time I reached in and put my hand on each side of her head, and I prayed for her, and so help me, she floated up. And I said, just stay there for a minute, and it'll be okay.
Yeah.
But I never panicked after that. I don't know. I guess if you spend those years trying to prepare your spirit for something like that, when it actually happens, that's the weird thing, is I was not upset. I wasn't spastic. I didn't go to pieces. I didn't do any of that. And when I look back, I wonder, why didn't you? And I'm like, I just didn't feel the need to be there.
Yeah.
So all those prayers up to that really are answered.
Well, I was not as calm and collected.
No.
I was really upset. But I do specifically remember you putting your hands on either side of her and kind of watching her come up out of the car. Because at that point I thought, oh, she still has her seatbelt on. Like, how is she going to get... And there was no way you could have opened the door to get you out. There's no way you could have got through the window. I mean, you were just completely crushed inside the car. But too, I think it was at that moment that we realized that the air freshener was on your lap, right?
It was in the passenger seat.
In the passenger seat. Okay, so it was either that week or the week before, just a few days before this accident, I had gone to the Christian bookstore, which was our favorite place to go, which are completely closed now. Not sure why.
There was no passenger seat.
That's true, where the passenger seat
was
should have been.
on the console.
Okay.
I mean, laying there.
Unwrapped.
Yeah, it was unwrapped. I mean, how could you, in a wrecked car, you would have to walk up after the accident and place it there.
Yeah.
With all this inertia and everything going on.
Right.
So the passenger seat
didn't exist.
It really wasn't there. It was gone. So if anybody would have been in the front passenger seat or any of the back seats, they would have no doubt been dead.
Yeah.
Because there was no room.
There was no space.
They would have been cut, crushed, or something else. And there was only one little section that was good.
Yes.
And that was Adrian's seat.
So we had gone to the Christian bookstore, and Lord only knows what we bought. But one of the things that Adrian bought was an air freshener for the car, and it was, remind me what was on it. I think it was the shepherd, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So Jesus as the shepherd. And it was still, in its casing, in the plastic bag in the trunk, and on the scene of the accident, it was unwrapped, perfectly put on the console right beside Adrian.
Yeah.
Which you could not explain, just like Dad was just saying. There's no way you could explain that. But I remember that as the ambulance come, and we grew up in a very small town. Everybody knew everybody. Dad not only owned a business in town, but was a minister in town. We played sports all through school, so everybody knew our family. They knew our family, and so it's like you could see the worry on people's faces when they would get there and realize that it was Dan Reed's daughter that was in this accident. And I do remember one of the paramedics having a conversation with you and Mom saying, she's going to need air cared, but it's going to be expensive. to get a helicopter out here from Miami Valley, which is where she needed to go, which was trauma at that point. So to bring them, and put them, but Mom and Dad said it doesn't matter how much it costs. And so they landed the air care in the field. I remember seeing all of that. And I remember watching you and Mom pray for her as she got into the helicopter, and just such a vivid, wild, but you were peaceful the whole time. I was not, but I do remember you praying for me that I would relax on the way to the hospital. Once we finally left the scene of the accident, came home, we're waiting on the other sister to get home so we could go tell her what was going on and get to the hospital to be with Adrian. I remember you coming back in the back seat of the van and praying for me. Like, Lord, you're probably like, Jesus, help her, help her. Because I had saw signs of life, obviously, of you, but in my 13-year-old brain, it didn't make sense for me that you would be able to still be my sister alive with that car act. I couldn't figure it out. So I was just trying to prepare myself for, okay, well, when we do get to the hospital and she is dead, then what do I do with myself? How are we even going to tell Celia? Is anybody going to call Danielle? My mind was going through, all of these things. And that was way before social media. So it's not like we could make a post and ask everybody to pray for us. We were truly, like Dad mentioned at the beginning, just you either have a relationship with God or you don't at that point. And so all of us just praying and calling on God, his fingerprint was throughout the whole thing. Like that your car, you were protected in that one spot, which didn't make any sense for the way your car was wrapped around all of those trees. You pulling up on that, you would think this is a fatality. There's no way someone has survived this. But not only did you survive it, talk to us about the injuries that you had.
Talk to us about going back to school.
Yeah, yes.
Well, I guess what happened, was on the way home. I think I hit gravel or something. I'm not really quite sure. Went off to the right side of the road, overcorrected, and the skid marks say that I hit the trees at 73. So I think I hit a fence maybe, and then it went my car around like 3 or 4 trees.
It looks like you hit a tree, it spun you around, you hit the back of the tree, and then you went back forward and hit another tree.
And then kind of went...
Stopped, wrapped around a tree.
So, and this was, I later found out, I don't even know if you know, but the people's yard that was in went to church. They heard the impact of my car, and they called their church to start praying.
Oh.
Which I don't know where they went to church. I have no clue. But I appreciate them, too, for doing that and saying all those prayers as well. But I guess I rode in a helicopter. I don't remember it. Some people get a shirt that says I rode in a helicopter. I did not get a shirt.
But you did get your favorite shirt cut.
I did. And my new jacket,
yes.
and my pant, or
But your shirt had angel wings on it.
It did.
Which is a whole other thing. I literally had angel wings on the shirt.
We just bought it.
I just bought it at
the
East
Body
Mall.
Central. Yes. It did have angel wings on the back. So I woke up in the CAT scan. I didn't know what was going on. The nurse said, "You've been in a car accident." And I said, "Well, is my car okay?" And they said, "Well, we don't know right now." And I went back out. Woke up again in the CAT scan. They told me again what happened because I didn't know. I have no recollection of what Crystal and Dad say. I was completely out, and I still don't remember it. Woke up again. They told me what happened. My neck kind of hurt a little bit. Went back out. Third time I woke up, my boyfriend's mom was there. I said, "Where is my mom and dad?" Because they didn't live far from Miami Valley because they were in Xenia. They said they're on their way. You were in a car accident. And I said, "Well, how's my car?" Nobody would answer how my car was.
Nobody wanted to tell. There was no car.
I still did not know what my car would look like. So I went back out, come back up. It's the third or the fourth time. I realized I had a neck brace on, and that was kind of what was irritating me. I tried to take it off. They wouldn't let me take the neck brace off. Mom and Dad ended up coming. I don't remember any of that. The next part I remember is I think I stayed all night in the hospital.
You came home that night.
Oh, I did come home. So I must have had a room.
You
In
never
the trauma
made it to
bay,
a room.
yeah.
Oh, see, I have no clue. I had no injuries. I had cuts on the back of my head that we found later. I looked like a chipmunk.
Because you were swollen. Because her face was swollen from the impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had no airbags went off or anything like that. So it was just a steering wheel, I guess, that I hit. But no problems really. I mean, some headaches, but that was it. I come back to school, and people looked at me with these wide eyes and was like, "Why are you here?"
Like dead man walking.
Yes. And I'm at my locker, and I'm like, "What do you mean? Why am I at school?" And they said, "Well, we thought you were dead." And I'm like, "No." So apparently it must have came through on the three-way, whatever you guys call it, that I had passed away in a car accident. And I mean, I didn't know that. Nobody had really talked to me about that. A few days later, the cop came by our house to give me a ticket.
How sweet.
Yes. And I told him it wasn't very nice to give me a ticket with what I had just been through, but he still gave me a failure to control ticket. And then did you want me to go into the...
Sure, yeah.
What is it called? Car teens. So whenever you have a car wreck, back then you used to have to go to car teens. So I went to car teens, and the cop that was at car teens, you know, they always have a sheriff or whatever.
So car teens would be like a way to get you to not do it again.
Yes.
It was like a disciplinary action for, hey, you did a bad job wrecking your car, so now go to this class before you get your license back.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
The sheriff there was actually the sheriff of my car wreck. And he had told me that it was nice to see me because he didn't know that I would be up and walking when he, you know, after he had seen the scene of that accident. So I thought that was kind of cool how it was all full circle, that the sheriff was able to see me like functioning as an adult, and well, I guess kind of as an adult, a teenager at that time, with really no injuries at all. I was fine.
Yeah, it's I never had the fear of my vision after that.
Wow.
So that was the completion of it, and the people standing around was all the people on the rescue team and the nurses and everybody that was there. They were all standing around watching to see what would happen.
They were. They I think they felt so helpless.
They were helpless.
Yeah.
None of them come to pray, other than the guy that was in the house did come and tell me. He went to church, he called his church, and he was sorry, and then they backed off.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, what would you do? I mean, there was really no one around the car except me, you, and Mom for quite a while. That was it. People would come up and look, and then they would leave because I guess they were, I don't know.
Yeah, I think if I try and think about it, which I never, I decided from that point that there's no way I'm ever working for EMS or anything like that. But even being a nurse and just thinking about looking at it probably from a medical standpoint, you were probably like, yeah, I got nothing. Like, unless a trauma helicopter gets here and someone with the jaws of life thinks it's worth trying to get her out, then I've got nothing. You know, so truly having that relationship with the Lord, then that's the thing, is you never know when something like this is going to happen. When your faith is going to be required of you. When your life is going to be required of you. Like my friend Amanda that died literally working at her computer, at her job.
Oh, wow.
Died. Yeah, you know, so like had just talked to her that morning, was in revival service with her that night, dancing, praising God in the altars. Talked to her that morning, gets up, she's on her work computer. I think 10:06 was like the last keystroke on her computer or something. And then immediately, like the Bible says, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So immediately her life was required of her, you know? And it's just, you just never know. And the excuse of, well, I'll wait to get it together till I'm, you know, an adult or whatever. If you would have not made it and you would have died, that you would have been a teenager that had passed, and hope to God you had your life together, you know?
Well, I think this all kind of wraps up back to your testimony. You can't fake your testimony.
Yeah.
You can't go back and fix it. It is as you go, it is your testimony.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a testimony, and, you know, part of what I was shown on the flip side of that is you can do this. That was the other side of it. So you can do this. Will you be prepared? No, you won't. But whenever you are, you can do this.
Wow.
So it gives you confidence at the same time as this warning of, you got to protect your kids, and this day will be there sooner or later. Mm-hmm. And I've had other visions that were the same as this day's coming, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Just be ready. Mm. So it's good that you need to live your testimony. And it was a bad day for me one day when I realized you could not change history. So if you have a bad testimony, you can't fix it. Mm. You can start and be born again and have a good one, mm-hmm. and then you don't have to go back and try to fix it, and you don't feel the need to fix it because it's gone. But you do need your own testimony. You may have a great mom and dad, great grandpa, great grandpa on top of that, but that's not yours.
Yeah.
You are your own, and the only way you will overcome the enemy is by your testimony, building your faith.
Yeah.
So it's a good time to start if you haven't.
Right. Adrian, can you talk to us a little bit about what that looked like after, obviously you go see the car at some point, and then that was probably a realization of, oh my God, like the Lord literally had his hand on me. So what did that feel like, realizing that, and then how has that impacted your life that you live now?
How long was it before I went to see the car? I mean, it was a couple days maybe. It was right down the road again because there was a body shop. Right.
That's the privilege of a small town.
Yeah.
Everything is a stone's throw away.
I think that's where it was, right?
I don't really know.
Or was it at Store?
I think it was that. Was it at Teddy's?
I think it was at Teddy's. I don't know. I guess I looked at it in disbelief because I'd never seen a car so mangled in my life.
Right.
And then the fact that I would even be in there, I mean, kind of like what Dad said, the only part that was okay was my seat. And I'm sure you have the pictures online. I mean, it was like a cubby of God was completely protecting me in that area. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I don't remember a lot about the wreck, like I said before. I guess it's always, the wreck has allowed me to always be, Dad has said this before, is, you don't get in a rush to get anywhere. Don't pull out in front of anybody. If there's a space behind that person, just let the car go and just take your time. Mm-hmm. So I try to do that every time I drive. Maybe it's from my car wreck, but I don't want it to happen again. Yeah. And I for sure don't want it to happen to my kids. So I just try to drive careful, and I pray when I'm in the car. Like, that's my spot where I can actually turn on my Christian music and can pray the whole way that I'm there. And I just try to live right, because you never do know when your time is. Yeah. And no, I didn't see a light. I didn't see black. I don't remember anything. Yeah. It was just complete. I have no recollection. And when I have asked God to allow me to remember it, I get a really bad headache. Oh. So I have realized that I'm probably not supposed to know everything that happened. It is, and that thing I told Crystal a couple of days ago, it's kind of odd how God blocks trauma out of your mind, because I know that I did not drive at least 6 weeks after that. Yeah. I was too afraid to get behind the wheel, and Dad had said, you can't be afraid forever. Mm-hmm. You have to make the steps to live your life. So we did do that, and we took baby steps to get back to me being confident in the road. But it's not just you on the road either. Yeah, my wreck was kind of isolated to me, but you kind of have to drive for everybody. Mm-hmm. Watch out for everybody.
Well, you brought up a good point. I think that when you go through trauma, a lot of times that's easy for the enemy to bring fear, but you said we worked through it. Dad said you can't be afraid forever. And then it was baby steps to get your confidence back. But obviously that was through much prayer. I know Dad was taking that before the Lord, Lord, help her. And not only did you get to work through that, because now you drive yourself everywhere,
Yeah.
but you obviously realized that you have a purpose and God
Yes.
wasn't done with you.
That's true, yes.
Yeah. So you can rest assured, I feel like, that, and I have had crazy things happen to me behind the wheel. Just the one where I've literally witnessed a car come in my lane. I was driving Mom and Dad's Expedition, so a big car. I don't know why I was driving. I guess it doesn't matter, but I was. And the car was in my lane. We were on a curve, and I thought, here we go. This is how I'm going home, because I can't go this way and I can't go that way. And I just remember saying Jesus and holding onto the steering wheel and feeling an impact and seeing the tail lights in my rearview mirror that it was still in my lane. And then when I got home, there was all this weird, like, bile-looking fluid inside the car. But that helped me realize then, obviously, your accident, then that, like, when God has his hand on you, and when you have a purpose, that the protection is there, and that, your life will be required of you when it's required of you, but when you have something to do, you better do it, right? We could probably sit here all day and talk about
I'm sure.
the way that God has had his hand on not only us, but our mom and on you and Celia and Danielle and just our whole family.
I mean, you two are still young parents, but you can see the testimony that Mom and I have from all these things that have happened to our kids. And so, the Bible says the prayer of a righteous man availeth much. You can see what changes would have happened if any of those had been catastrophic to both of you.
Right.
Because some people kind of questioned yours until I went out and opened the door. And then all this, I don't know how to explain it, but all this stuff was in there all through the car that we had to clean out, but there had been no wreck.
Right.
So, you should have a good testimony. And I think that's the thing for today is, as you brought up, is people should have your own testimony.
I remember one of the EMSs, he didn't believe in God. And you might know the exact words, I don't know, but he did. I think he went up to Dad later and said that he knows that there is a God.
Yeah, well, there's been several people come back to me after that and just, look, it wouldn't have happened if you didn't pray, They may not have believed in God, but they're glad I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but now they know he exists.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not only a testimony for you, it's other people get to see it and they get to witness it, and that becomes part of their testimony.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what I always come back to a lot, and what I try and do with my family and what you try and do with yours, is live a life of testimony. Like, let your kids be involved in God and his miracles, and how it not just let the Bible be one of stories of things that happened a long time ago, but to be able to say, okay, well, God healed this man in the Word, and so we know that he never changes, and so he has the ability to heal you now. So now we are going to pray for healing, and to bring those things forward, and so that they can see that God still does it.
And your kids pray.
Yes,
and with you.
And I have found, especially Jensen, which is my second, he's 5 years old. When he prays, it's such a simple prayer, but there's so much faith in it.
Yeah.
And I find I don't need to say anything else after he's done, Yeah. And if we'll be on the phone with somebody or talk to somebody through the window and they'll express a need, and I'll say, well, we'll pray. Jensen will say, let's pray now. And he will be like, Lord, in Jesus' name, and just pray. And Alex and I are always so the childlike faith that the Bible talks about, watching it in your own kids is great. So it's my prayer that they just continue. Yeah. We just continue in that flow, and that we get to just watch God, show off in our lives. So, do we have anything else to say before we end? Do you have anything you want to say, Adrian, before we wrap up?
So I'm thankful to still be here and be able to share the testimony. Obviously, I need help to share the testimony because I don't know all the details of everything. But it seems like every time we talk about it, I learn a little bit more and a little bit more about what actually went on that night. So
one of these days we'll tell you more.
Well, thank you for joining us. I'm so glad we got a chance to talk to Adrian. I told her, even though she didn't remember her being alive, and sitting at the table with us was enough of a testimony.
Yeah.
So live a life of testimony. Like, be such a Spirit-filled Christian that you can call on God and have a life that is consecrated enough that God hears your prayers and answers and responds, because we are living proof that that is not only great but necessary. So we're thankful for
We have plenty more testimonies.
I know, we
We
could sit
really
here
do
all
as a
day.
family.
I know. So many healings. And that was one thing, even when I was trying to work out my own faith in college. And there was an atheist that lived down the dorm from me. And he loved having conversations with me because I had this, he was like, there's something different about the way you argue the word. And I'm like, it's because I know it's real. You know, because I had seen healings and I had seen the Spirit in operation my entire life. So the Bible was more than just written words to me. And so even though I was struggling with my calling and my faith and my own rebellion, and I was trying to figure all of that out, the fact that I knew that God was real, that I really think was the anchor in my life that I couldn't float away from. Like, I knew that God was real because I had seen him work. And I'm terrified for the people that just have religion but don't experience relationship, because then there's no anchor to hold you.
So that brings up the other verse, bring up a child in the ways of the Lord, and you can look up that verse.
Yep, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. That's right. You probably prayed that over me when I was in college, like, God, your word says! I know Adrian did. I know she did. Oh, but I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful for it. So if you have somebody that is not walking in the consecration that you know that they should be, keep praying for them. Because I say all the time, anytime I get a chance, that those prayers work. And I could never sin in peace when I was sinning. The God was always bothering me, and I knew that it wasn't right. And I know it was the prayers of my parents and the prayers of my family and my sisters that helped nudge me back over to just full surrender. So never stop praying.
Yeah, good.
We love you. See you next time.
Bye.